Hi, Anne-Sophie. Welcome to the Returnex podcast.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for having me again.
I know we talked years ago when you were writing YA Kisses and Croissant, which was this lovely exploration that it's set in France. It's a ballerina, right? Yep, like ballet.
It's about a
Been a
ballet
while.
dance.
My good stories a while. It's perfect for Anna and the French Kiss. Like if you like Anna and the French
Yes.
Kiss, the Kiss and Croissant is like the perfect companion. But over the past couple of years, you have transitioned over to adult fiction, but it's actually into the thriller space. Tell us what you got up to.
Well, up to a lot of writing, really. So I think I'm one of those people who I love like swinging back and forth and kissing songs. And my next book, French Kiss in New York, was very cute, upbeat, sweet, romantic, and I love writing them. But while I was writing them, I was yearning for something darker and twistier, and I was reading all these thrillers that I was just very excited. Were just exciting reads to me, and I got me thinking, well, could I write something very twisty and kind of dark and messy and all of those things? And well, the only way to find out is to try. So I tried and tried and tried for many years. And I was the French honeymoon, and that got me a true book deal with my current publisher. So the second book in this contract is the one that's coming out this April, and it's called We Will Never Tell. So right now I'm promoting this book. I'm writing my third thriller, and I also have another project that I can't really talk about right now, but that's been another novel in the works. In tons of fun to write. Hopefully more news on this.
I love this. I love your journey because you started writing in French and like actually being an author in France and then transitioning to the English market. I was going to say American market, but the English market and seeing the transition. I'll link into your person to read to talk about your journey, but talking to us about the journey of writing thrillers because there's an art form. There's a lot of like suspense. There's a lot of blood that needs to be devised. There's red herrings. There's different things, and there's also like a level of like anxiety and stress that you have to incite on the reader so they can keep turning the pages on. What was that process of finding your voice along with the structure of what a thriller should look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes from a ton of reading as many thrillers could, and not just thrillers, honestly, because any good book any good book has a decent plot structure. Any good book is designed to make you want to turn the page. It's just slightly easier to do that when a dead body and like when there's life in
Yes,
right? Some of the books where there's no nothing. I think for me, I try to really tap into every time I read something, what do I like about it? What are some tropes? And tropes for me are not like a negative. They just like this, I'm really attached to that. I really respond to this as a reader. Therefore, I want to put it in my own writing. One thing I did for both the French honeymoon and We Would Never Tell, it starts with an unknown body. The French honeymoon starts with this woman drowning in a bathtub. We don't know who she is. And then we meet two women. And We Would Never Tell starts with girls who tell us that they were involved in a murder. And we don't know who the dead body is for a very long time. And it's trope I like in other books. And so for me, just tells me that I'm just going to put that in my own. One thing I really like to do is really looking at chapter openings and chapter closings to really try to, and it's not always ending on a cliffhanger, but really ending on a thought that can really propel the story forward. And it's with Brits, I really think about what are some things that just really work for me as a reader, because as we all know, it's extremely subjective. So a trope that I really like or a twist or an element that I really like is not for everybody. But as long as I'm writing a novel that I would want to read, I think I'm halfway there, at least halfway there. And I do write an extended synopsis for all my books where I really putting a ton of ideas of how they the big character development, mostly plot, this happens and this happens. And I would say for We Would Never Tell, and I had a pretty clear vision of who done it and who was
yeah,
the dead body, and all of that was very clear. There's some smaller plot elements changed because, of course, they do, but the bones of it were there from the start. I originally was kind of thinking I'd write a heist, like a jewelry heist. This is the
Yeah.
multi-million dollar plus that was missing, and now it's not a heist. It's that simple theft. But I think while I like the idea of a heist, I feel like it's very important to make sure you're true to your characters. And I could not come up with a motive for them to pull that heist
Yeah.
that I wanted to write about. And it didn't fit with what the characters had created. So I gave that up really quickly, even before I
Yeah.
started writing. But that was kind of the original thing of that make very shiny, glamorous palm tree parties and a heist. And now it's a murder and a soul necklace.
Yeah. So we want to retell a Sad and Counts Festival. We get the opening scene of a podcast interview. I think it's so you use a little bit of multimedia of interviews and celebrity gossip and three intermingle storylines of different people who are part of the Cannes Film Festival. As you share, it's a theft, it's a necklace theft, not a heist, but it's still pretty edge of your seat. There's a murder. What else can we tell listeners why they should pick it up? I think for me, the celebrity glamour of Cannes Film Festival and just having this place of like celebrities and people who support celebrities or support the Hollywood machine is fascinating.
For me, it was the realization that it's one of the most glamorous events you could possibly think of. Like the Oscars are extremely glamorous, but it's when like man
Yeah.
does this for 12 nights in a row. And in a small, gorgeous town in the French Riviera, which the rest of the time, I mean, it's not a tiny town, but the rest of the time, it's a pretty normal town. Obviously, a very touristy location. But I found the combination of kind of a smaller space because everyone's confined to a fairly, like a smaller town or a town, not a big city. And you have people who are there for multiple days. So the festival goes on for 12 days. Based on my research, most celebrities come in and out, like the big celebrities come in, promote for 1 or 2 parties, maybe for 2 or 3 days. Not many people are there for the 12 days. But what I found very interesting is people on the outside see the red carpet, the extreme glamour. We see parties, photos from biggest celebrities at parties. But for one A-list actor that attends Cannes or who attends Cannes, you really have like 20 people behind that person. The makeup artists have multiple assistants. For the hairstylists and for the clothing stylist, photographers, videographers, all of these people, they have people who help them because it's big jobs where all the media producers, anyone in the film industry. I mean, I just get very fascinated by contrast in general. And I'm thinking for every Kate Blanchett or Emma Stone who's there, there's a 25-year-old who's staying at this really crappy hotel, eating vending machine, just a bag of chips. And that person's job is going to be to hold like Emma Stone's handbag during photos. And it's just so interesting to me because those are jobs people kill for because it's proximity to glamour, but it's extremely unglamorous. So I knew from day one I wanted to write about those people, the people behind
Yeah.
the people, as I call them. I just find it just so interesting. And I will say also during the course of my research, I talked to a few people who attended Cannes, so people who are not famous people. And even when they'd been to Cannes like years and years ago, you could hear the excitement in their voice of having had that experience, having been there, having managed to snag an invite to a screening because you can go to screenings. You can't really go to premieres unless you're like fully invited, which is a plot line in the book. But it was what I heard from people was the same thing. The excitement, the experience was something that was extremely memorable to them. And I thought there's really something there about the setting that really appealed to me.
Yeah, I feel like the setting is like it's perfect summer book because it's just basically feeling in the French Riviera. It's adjacent to rich people behaving badly because there's more to the story. But we have the supports of trying to make ends meet and trying to make a name for themselves and become the future rich people who's behaving badly and the decisions they had to make. And you see, it's a really good position because you're just engaged. The chapters are in the alternate between different characters and different storylines. And you're like, okay, how this is going to mix? And then finding a way to move forward with it. knowing that there's a dead body and there's a necklace that's missing and we don't know what's going on. But it was fun to see the parties and people get in trouble for it, which I feel like it's more often now with influencers who are just basically I'm taking pictures. I have my entourage come and rate me. They're just, yeah.
Totally. And I will say, even though it's hard to research the parties because there's not always that much footage from them, especially the tons of them, but what came through in my research was there are so many parties. You have every night, you have the very fancy and exclusive parties. Every brand is there hosting a sponsored event. Every woman and her dog at your party.
Yeah.
And some people have been like, well, you basically get puns all night until 9 a.m. if you want to. It's just an after party after an after party, and you can roll out of the last party at 9 a.m. and go to the greeting. And I've talked to people who actually do that, and like it's exhausting and amazing, and at the end you're like so tired, but also but not go to that last party that's at 7 a.m. Which is it just really feels like a once in a lifetime experience. Yeah, and that's how very unique. Again, the Oscars are similar. There's party after party for one. I mean, it's a party, but I took an excuse to just have my characters go to party after party. It just felt fun. It's not very summer, and I just felt like a fun, indulgent thing to write about and to think about. Who believe
it felt like rich yachting and really expensive cars and really expensive, like just different how they call activations, like other opportunities to connect with another. And then the downtime during the day is kind of like you're just trying to survive, essentially doing your job because you're like, okay, well, now I have to do my job. And so for listeners, We Would Never Tell is perfect for the summer. So pick it up now if you want to read it, but definitely pick it up because it's delightful. And Sophie, tell us like some book recommendations actually, because you talked about the books you read, but let's talk some book recommendations. Like you shared some thrillers, which I'm excited. I already told you my thoughts, and I was like, I am anxious for her, but that's my story.
I love that. All right. I was saying, I read so many books and so many I love. And so I'm just really looking the last few weeks. I just read Good People and I apologize for any mispronunciation of anyone, but Patmina Sabit, something like that. And I absolutely adore that book. It had been a while since I was just so desperate to finish it that I didn't care what else was going on in my life. And I think it's more booklet fiction, a little bit more on the literary side. But that's like it read like a thriller to me because there is a death or a tragic accident, I should say, at the center of the book. And the big question is, was it an accident? Was it intentional? And I don't want to say too much, but it's told from a dozen different POVs. It's basically told through interviews. And it's a story about immigrants Afghan immigrants in the United States. And those stories are always close to my heart. I always find them, it's a completely different culture that I'm familiar with, but it was just ripping. And there was it's still so much heart, so much culture in it. I will be talking about this book for months and months to come. I also recently read an advanced copy of Jessica Payne. Her new novel is coming out in June. It's called Somebody Worth Killing. It is so fun. It is about a woman who is a mom, and she's a mom, a wife. She's on paper, just a perfect woman. She's not a housewife, but she's the woman behind the man and the woman who's getting the children ready to go to school and all of that. But actually, she's an assassin for hire. And so she is starting to feel like maybe she's stalling in her career as an assassin, as so many women who are mothers can relate to, because sometimes you feel like the glass ceiling in any line of work that you do. And she goes after a really big job that turns out to be that she has to kill her husband. And so anyway, it's just one of these really fast-paced, really fun, just kind of delightful reads that I highly recommend. And it's a series, so I'll not give any spoilers, but I was like, give me the next book as soon as possible.
Oh my gosh.
Another book that I really love recently, and we were just talking about it, called Best Author Wins by Marissa Kishino. Again, apologies if I don't pronounce it very well. It was just complete unhinged character that I just could not get enough of. There was an extremely strong voice There's this woman who desperately wants to buy a house in a DC area, desperately wants a baby, will stop at nothing happen. And it's just, as we were talking about, like, it's just so anxiety inducing to see this woman just make the worst possible decisions. But I have mad respect for anyone who wants something so bad and they're willing to go after it in such an intense, completely chaotic way. And I will say, and I have to bring this back to my book, but people say to me, "Oh, your characters are so chaotic. There's such a hot mess." And in my head, I'm like, this is ambitious. When you really want something, you sometimes do crazy things that may look crazy to other people, but it's hard sometimes to pull back and realize that you could behave better. But I think in the case of Ben Stuff for Wings, it just, I don't know. It was such an absolute delightful, crazy read.
It is a very engaging book. Like, it'll hook you up. Like, it's sad in the post-pandemic world where houses are short inventory, everything gets cash offers, and you have no liquidity to actually buy a house. It's like the millennial era of we can't afford to buy our houses and have a baby and have all these different things, and trying to do this in this very, like, very settled place. You're like, that you think you should be a grown up, because DC is like a grown up city. Like, you're supposed to be a grown up. You're not supposed to be making reckless decisions in your 20s, like New York City.
I kind of love this because I think our generation, and I think to this book, and are we ever going to be grown ups or feel like? Oh, I think I grew up in an environment where there was very much like that suburban life with the 2.2 kids, and I just. And I mean, I've did some of it. I mean, I live in the middle of New York City, so all of that criteria, but I mean, some of it, and I really do not feel like a grown up at all. I don't live by ever well. I know technically I'm supposed to. I don't know. That's why I enjoy reading about these women. I think there's just nothing about them that feel like adult, serious adult women, and I'm here for it. The last one I recommend is, I mean, I could keep going and going, but I really love Fighting Grace by Loretta Shaw.
Yeah.
That's the way she sounds it. I don't want, there's a big event, I will say, at the end of chapter 1 that's not mentioned in the synopsis, so I want everyone to have a surprise for mention it. But it was one of those books that it's kind of literary / book fiction, but combines thriller elements and romance elements in such a beautiful way. I couldn't get enough. I don't want to say too much because I think that book is designed for surprise, so I will leave it at that. But I thought it was extremely well done, extremely well written, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm picking that one up next, so thank you. And Sophie, tell us where you can find it online.
Yes, absolutely. So I am pretty much on every social media platform at AS Jouhanneau. So that's ASJouhanneau. That's my last name. I'm most active on Instagram and Substack. That anyway you look, you'll probably find something from me. I can't resist it.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the What to Read Next. For more book lists, cozy reads, and library tips, visit the whattoreadnextblog.com. Your next great read might be waiting there.